I think other people seem to sparkle when they're in love, and I like to see that. But for me, it's like I sparkle when I'm not in love, which is kind of okay.
Karoline Leavitt's appearance on The View was nothing short of explosive, as she directly challenged Whoopi Goldberg and the panel for their dismissive attitude toward conservative voices. From the moment Leavitt took her seat, it was clear she was not there to simply nod along or allow herself to be talked over. Instead, she came prepared to confront the show's long-standing reputation for marginalizing and belittling perspectives that deviate from its predominantly liberal stance. Leavitt, a young but seasoned political operative who served as press secretary for the Trump campaign, immediately took issue with the panel's condescending tone, calling out their tendency to mock or ignore conservative viewpoints rather than engage in meaningful dialogue. Leavitt began by addressing Whoopi Goldberg directly, pointing out that her dismissive behavior toward conservative guests and ideas was not only unproductive, but also alienating to a significant portion of the American audience. She argued that The View often portrays itself as a platform for diverse voices, yet consistently fails to extend that inclusivity to those with right-leaning perspectives. Leavitt emphasized that this dismissiveness was not just a matter of political disagreement, but a broader cultural issue, where conservative women in particular are often ridiculed or dismissed for their beliefs rather than being taken seriously. Whoopi, known for her strong personality and no-nonsense demeanor, initially attempted to deflect Leavitt's criticisms with sarcasm and dismissive remarks. However, Leavitt refused to back down, holding her ground and demanding that her voice be heard. She pointed out that the panel's behavior was emblematic of a larger problem in media and entertainment, where conservative women are often subjected to harsher scrutiny and personal attacks than their liberal counterparts. Leavitt's calm yet firm demeanor stood in stark contrast to the panel's increasingly combative tone, making her arguments all the more compelling. The tension in the room was palpable as Leavitt continued to press her point, challenging Whoopi and the other co-hosts to reflect on their own biases and consider how their behavior contributes to the polarization of political discourse in America. By the end of the segment, it was clear that Leavitt had not only held her own, but had also exposed the double standards and dismissive attitudes that have long plagued The View. Her appearance marked a turning point, forcing the show and its audience to confront uncomfortable truths about how conservative voices are treated in mainstream media. Karoline Leavitt's critique of The View panel for being out of touch with the majority of American voters, particularly on the issue of wokeness, struck a nerve and highlighted a growing cultural divide between the media elite and everyday Americans. Leavitt argued that the panel's relentless promotion of progressive ideologies and their dismissive attitude toward opposing viewpoints have alienated a significant portion of the country, particularly those who feel that wokeness has gone too far. She pointed out that while the co-hosts often frame their perspectives as morally superior, their rhetoric and policies often fail to resonate with the practical concerns of working-class Americans, who are more focused on issues like inflation, crime, and education than on the latest cultural debates. Leavitt emphasized that the disconnect between The View and its audience is not just a matter of differing opinions, but a fundamental failure to understand the values and priorities of the American heartland. She cited polling data and election results to underscore her point, noting that many of the policies and ideas championed by the panel, such as defunding the police, gender ideology in schools, and cancel culture, are deeply unpopular with a majority of voters. Leavitt argued that the panel's insistence on pushing these agendas, despite their lack of widespread support, demonstrates how out of touch they are with the realities facing ordinary Americans. The co-hosts, particularly Joy Behar and Sunny Hostin, attempted to push back against Leavitt's claims, arguing that wokeness is simply a matter of social justice and equality. However, Leavitt countered by defining wokeness not as a genuine pursuit of fairness, but as a political weapon used to silence dissent and enforce conformity. She accused the panel of using the language of inclusivity and tolerance to shut down meaningful debate and marginalize those who disagree with their worldview. Leavitt pointed to specific examples from the show, where conservative guests or ideas were mocked or dismissed outright, as evidence of this trend. Leavitt says critique resonated with many viewers who feel that mainstream media, including The View, has become an echo chamber for progressive elites rather than a platform for diverse perspectives. By calling out the panel's detachment from the concerns of everyday Americans, Leavitt not only challenged the show's credibility, but also sparked a broader conversation about the role of media in shaping public discourse. Her bold stance underscored the growing frustration among conservatives and moderates alike with the media's perceived bias and its failure to represent the full spectrum of American voices. The tension between Karoline Leavitt and the co-hosts of The View reached a boiling point when the panel, particularly Joy Behar, resorted to personal remarks rather than engaging with Leavitt's arguments. As Leavitt calmly articulated her perspective on the show's dismissive attitude towards certain viewpoints, Behar interrupted with a snide comment about Leavitt's appearance, a move that many viewers saw as a low blow and a deflection from the substantive discussion at hand. Behar's remark, which seemed intended to undermine Leavitt's credibility, instead backfired, as it highlighted the panel's tendency to resort to personal attacks when challenged. Leavitt, unfazed by the jab, quickly fired back with a sharp retort, calling out the co-hosts for their hypocrisy. She pointed out that while The View often positions itself as a champion of women's empowerment and inclusivity, its treatment of women who hold differing opinions often falls far short of those ideals. Leavitt's response was measured but firm, emphasizing that personal attacks have no place in a meaningful discussion and that the panel's behavior only reinforced her earlier critique of the show's dismissive and condescending tone. The exchange grew increasingly heated as the other co-hosts jumped in to defend Behar, further escalating the confrontation. Leavitt, however, remained composed, refusing to be baited into a shouting match. Instead, she redirected the conversation back to the issues at hand, challenging the panel to address her points rather than resorting to ad hominem attacks. Her ability to stay focused and articulate under pressure stood in stark contrast to the panel's increasingly combative demeanor, earning her respect from many viewers who were tired of the show's often toxic dynamic. The audience in the studio reacted with a mix of gasps and murmurs, clearly taken aback by the intensity of the exchange. Social media quickly lit up with reactions, with many praising Leavitt for standing her ground and calling out the panel's behavior. The incident underscored a broader issue with The View's format, where substantive debate often takes a back seat to personal drama and sensationalism. By refusing to engage in the panel's usual tactics, Leavitt not only held her own, but also exposed the double standards and unprofessionalism that have become all too common on the show. Her poise and determination in the face of hostility left a lasting impression, sparking a wider conversation about how women with differing viewpoints are treated in media and entertainment. As the tension on The View escalated, Karoline Leavitt found herself in a position where she had to defend not only her arguments, but also her credibility and qualifications. When the co-host attempted to dismiss her perspective by implying she lacked the experience or expertise to speak on the issues at hand, Leavitt calmly but firmly pushed back, highlighting her professional background and accomplishments. She made it clear that she was not there as a casual commentator, but as someone with a proven track record in media and communications, which gave her the authority to speak on the topics being discussed. Leavitt pointed out that she had worked in high-pressure environments, where she honed her skills in public speaking, strategic communication, and crisis management. She emphasized that her experience had taught her how to navigate complex discussions and stand her ground, even in the face of intense scrutiny or opposition. By doing so, she effectively countered the panel's attempts to undermine her credibility and demonstrated that she was more than capable of holding her own in a challenging and often hostile setting. The co-host, seemingly caught off guard by her confident and articulate response, tried to shift the focus back to their own narratives, but Leavitt refused to let them steer the conversation away from her points. She reiterated that her perspective was informed by real-world experience and a deep understanding of the issues at hand, rather than mere ideology or partisanship. This assertion not only bolstered her position, but also exposed the panel's tendency to dismiss voices that didn't align with their own, regardless of their qualifications or expertise. Leavitt's ability to defend herself with poise and professionalism stood in stark contrast to the panel's increasingly combative and dismissive tone. Her refusal to be intimidated or sidelined resonated with many viewers, who saw her as a refreshing change from the usual dynamics of the show. By standing firm and asserting her credentials, Leavitt not only validated her own voice, but also challenged the broader culture of The View, where personal attacks and dismissiveness often overshadow meaningful dialogue. Her performance served as a powerful reminder that substance and professionalism should always take precedence over sensationalism and personal bias. Karoline Leavitt's confrontation with Whoopi Goldberg about sexism on The View was a defining moment in her appearance, as she called out the glaring hypocrisy of a show that claims to champion women's empowerment, while simultaneously mocking and belittling women who hold differing viewpoints. Leavitt pointed out that while The View often celebrates women who break barriers and achieve success, its treatment of conservative or independent-minded women is often dismissive dismissive, condescending, and at times outright hostile. She argued that this double standard undermines the show's stated mission of empowering women and instead perpetuates a culture where only certain types of women are deemed worthy of respect and support. Leavitt's critique struck a chord as she highlighted specific instances where the panel had ridiculed or marginalized women who didn't conform to their ideological expectations. She noted that this behavior not only silences diverse perspectives, but also sends a damaging message to viewers that women are only empowered if they align with a particular set of beliefs. Leavitt challenged Whoopi and the other co-hosts to reflect on whether their actions truly aligned with their professed values, or if they were simply paying lip service to the idea of women's empowerment while practicing exclusion and bias. Whoopi, initially defensive, attempted to deflect the criticism by suggesting that Leavitt was misinterpreting the panel's intentions. However, Leavitt stood her ground, calmly but firmly reiterating that the issue was not about intent but about impact. She argued that the panel's dismissive and often mocking tone toward women with differing views had real consequences, both for the women involved and for the broader cultural conversation about gender equality. By calling out this hypocrisy, Leavitt forced the panel to confront an uncomfortable truth about their own behavior and its implications. The audience reaction was mixed, with some visibly uncomfortable, while others seemed to appreciate Leavitt's boldness. Social media quickly lit up with discussions about the exchange, with many praising Leavitt for her courage in addressing an issue that often goes unspoken. Her willingness to challenge the panel on its own terms, while maintaining her composure and professionalism, underscored her ability to navigate difficult conversations with grace and conviction. This moment not only solidified Leavitt's position as a formidable voice, but also sparked a broader conversation about what true empowerment and inclusivity should look like in media and beyond.